recommence here at Le Castellet in the south of France. The 2013 season for the European Le Mans Series has come to an end, and our championship winners have been crowned. And what a season it's been, from the very first race at Silverstone through to here. We've grown from 12 cars on the grid to 36 cars, and it's fair to say that this is a championship that's been revived and looks to be going from strength to strength. But before we look forward to 2014, let's take a reminder of how it all began back in April in the UK. The home of British motorsport lies in the heart of Northampton, and with a history dating back to 1948, this circuit has seen its fair share of memorable races. Welcome to the first round. It was a typically British April showers at Silverstone, with storm clouds looming and greasy track conditions from the start. Oliver Turvey had the first pole of the season in his Jotosport car number 35, alongside the distinct green and white car of the Murphy prototypes. Leading the pack through then and down onto the start-finish straight, with the distinct race control wing in view here at Silverstone, and it was time for the first green light of the year. Turvey made a textbook start, as did Murphy Prototypes car number 18 as they accelerated away from the start, but it wasn't such a great start for the Orica, spinning midfield and hitting the pit wall, narrowly avoiding any contact. And the early positions were Jotosport, Senior Tech Alpine, TDS Racing and Murphy Prototypes. It was early pit stops, with drivers making the change from intermediates to wets as the rain began to fall and the grip began to diminish. The safety car was deployed and the snatch was released to recover the start line spinner. Just 10 minutes of the race gone and the green flag was waved once again. And it was the Alpine that took this lead from Jotosport. And in third, TDS Racing. Quite a gap pulled out from the Alpine already, and again from Jotosport through to the TDS car. And then pit stop round 2 for those who hadn't managed to pit before the safety car. Conditions were worsening, and next fall victim to the weather was TDS Racing of Matthias Besch and Pierre Thirier, who failed to find any grip and straight line through the gravel trap. Moran Racing started the season with a strength that was to continue throughout the year, and side by side alongside Murphy's boys, it was apparent that the control here was everything, as the two continued to battle for first place. A happy Irish team look on and celebrate as they witness their car take the lead. In the LMP2 class, Paul Chatin had pulled away from teammate Suhail Harari, and with a 34-second gap, they drove the perfect race, pretty much unchallenged and away from traffic, which, in the worsening weather, was no bad thing. In the GTE class, it was the 52 Ferrari of Mollem and Griffin leading, just ahead of the GTC battle between the Audi and the BMW Z4 of Acuria Kos. And bad times for race leaders, the number 18 Murphy prototype car, who literally just aquaplaned into the gravel. That was Brendan Hartley, who found himself well and truly buried in the kitty litter, and with very little prospect of rejoining the race, let alone regaining the lead. A replay then of exactly what happened, and just look at the amount of spray. The weather is definitely starting to get the better of this race. Brendan, just a passenger in a car that is gliding across the water. Bad news too for the AF Corsa, who is parked and the driver out. And for the Senior Tech Alpine, who spun at turn 2, avoiding the gravel but struggling to get back on the black stuff as he wheel spins out of the muddy grass to rejoin. And again, the surface water plays havoc as the Alpine accelerates around the corner and looks very twitchy. Well, circuit racing looking a lot like rallying as the cars battle to make their way around each corner at Silverstone, and Moran Racing holding on to the lead, just gliding here and doing all they can to keep that position. TDS Racing then in third position, with a nice gap between them and Jota Sport just behind them. And into the pits is the 77 Porsche of Nick Tandy. That looks like new tyres as well as fuel. And the number 3 car is off too. I believe turn 2 once again, this obviously proving one of the most precarious parts of the 5.8 kilometre track. Here a replay of what happened, and it looks like just a little pressure to get on the gas early out of the corner was all it took to lose the back end and spin. TDS Racing closed the gap enough on Senior Tech Alpine to make a challenge for the second position, and as they make their way around the Lovefield complex, it seems they have done enough. They go through and accelerate away, leaving the Alpine to deal with the pressure of the Jota Sport of Dolan and Turvey, who are now right on their tail. Moran Racing then coming through to, I assume, lap the Porsche. And in these conditions, it's fair to say that the GT cars will benefit from more grip. And Moran Racing are off, and Natasha Gashnang, second driver, looking grossly disappointed there as she looks on from the garage. Frank Malio then was the race leader, now firmly embedded in the gravel trap, and that was the end of the road for Moran Racing team this weekend. Here Oliver Turvey in the 38 Zytek Nissan, who seems to be alone for now. And another off this time, one for the Ram Racing Ferraris. I've lost count now of how many spinners we've seen. Well, here is the replay, and once again, zero grip out of the corner, and the back end has gone. Another replay then, and this time, the Ecuria Cos struggling. Was there contact there? Montecalvo then in the 53 Ferrari was back in the race and was passed by the 77 Porsche of Nick Tandy. And the battle for first continued between Race Performance and TDS Racing, with the gap now closed right up. And I would hate to be at the wheel of the red TDS Racing car right now. Just look at the spray coming off the back of the lead car, and that just shows how bad the conditions were. Oh, both the LMP2 cars were forced to take evasive action around the Ferrari facing the wrong way. Well, that just gave TDS Racing the chance they needed to get through and take the lead. Another replay, this time the Jota Sport of Simon Dolan leaving the track and heading towards the tyre wall. And then the turn of the Audi R8, who was out. The Ecuria Cos, driven by Alistair McCaig, and first in the GTC class, managed to stay clear of trouble for now. And the category leaders, LMP2 Terrier by TDS Racing, the GTE Proton Competition, LMPC is Team Endurance Challenge car number 48. And clearly here you can see the weather conditions are getting worse with more and more spinners. Race director Eduardo Frutas made the call for a safety car at almost half distance. And that was to eventually turn to a red flag. But enough distance had been covered to mean that results would count. So the cars walked around to the start-finish straight to then be returned to the pits. The first podium of the year then, and race winners were Simon Dolan and Oliver Turvey. A win at home for the British duo was the perfect start to their season. Race Performance took second and TDS Racing third. So, classification after the opening round saw Jota Sport leading the championship for the LMP2. Proton Competition led the GTEs, Team Endurance Challenge in the LMPC, and Ecuria Cos for the GTC. Next up is Imola. north of Italy, just outside of Bologna. Cross the river, and to the left, you find yourself in the unlikely setting of the Imola paddock, a beautiful circuit of 4.9 kilometres of undulating racetrack. Oliver Turvey took his second pole of the season, and starting alongside him was TDS Racing of Matthias Besch. In perfect formation, and after what seemed like a rather late lights out, it was the start of another 3-hour race. Coming out of turn 1, there was a clear battle starting to play out as Turvey had both TDS Racing and Murphy Prototypes hot on his heels. And there was very little between the top 6 as Moran Racing closed down on the Senior Tech Alpine. Field coming through then, the left-hander, and spreading out nicely. And as things settled down, it was Jota Sport who managed to maintain the lead by a small margin from Murphy's boys. And in third, TDS Racing, with very little between the top 6 at the opening stages of the race. Team Endurance Challenge, Orica number 49 took an early class lead, as did the number 52 Ram Racing Ferrari driven by Matt Griffin in the first stint. Coming towards the end of the first lap, and TDS Racing and Alpine were battling it out for third, while Turvey pulled away to extend his early lead. The LMP cars made short work of catching the back end of the field and were quickly lapping through the GT cars, almost making the Ferrari look slow. A great opportunity for Turvey to make a break from the pack and use traffic to his advantage. As you can see, the TDS passed the Alpine to go third and quickly reeled in his next challenge, the green and white car of Murphy Prototypes. And in the GTE class, the race was on between the 52 Ram Racing Ferrari and the Matmut Porsche as they rode the Italian curbs. Back with the LMP cars, and this is where the race was really heating up, with barely a cat's whisker separating the top 3. Certainly, this was a remarkable charge from the second and third place cars of Murphy's boys and TDS Racing. TDS Racing weaving considerably, desperately trying to use the toe to his advantage and to find a way past second place man ahead of him. Well, just over a third of the distance now, and the Ram Racing car, still piloted by Griffin, appeared to have shaken off the challenge from rival Porsche and was driving a somewhat lonely race. Well, it was goodbye to the Lola Judd at nearly halfway distance as they became beached in the gravel, with the snatch the only option for a recovery. A replay of what happened then as the cameraman finds the cloud of dust and then the car just gliding across the gravel. I can only assume too aggressive on the power, as there doesn't appear to be anyone else involved. Rejoining the battle for first then, and it's still Jota Sport in the lead, but only just from the TDS Racing car, who put in an outstanding performance, reeling the cars ahead to be in contention now for the lead. Let's hear from Matthias Besch, who's in the pits.
We really want to prove that we can win the championship again, and yeah, it's a close fight. I hope it will stay fair, but for the moment it's really nice to look. I hope we can overtake.
As we rejoin the battle once more, it seems that they can overtake, and they do as the pair come through traffic.